Hello, everyone. I'm Dominique.
And I'm Christina, and we are the Connected in Glass podcast.
Every week, we will feature interviews with glass artists who speak to their creative processes and overcoming challenges.
These conversations are real and raw. We hope that by sharing these stories, you're able to find some connection and know that you're not alone. Today, we're interviewing Jeremy Sinkus. Jeremy is a glass artist from Conway, Massachusetts, who's been working in glass for about 20 years.
Thanks for being here with us. So, we like to start our conversation off by just getting to know you, where you live, maybe skip glass for a minute, and work into your life with glass.
Oh boy. Well, yeah, I live in Conway, Massachusetts, Western Mass. My hub is kind of Shelburne Falls, Conway area. That's where my studio is. Uh, what I do for a living is well, glass. I've been doing this for a living since 2005, so 15 years doing it as a living. It's hard to say what else I do besides that. It takes so much of my time. It's like I'm always in the studio. I'm always working in glass. But what I'm not, I like to garden, kind of have like a little mini homestead thing going on here, and spend as much time at the ocean as I possibly can, and dig some rocks and crystals and fossils when I can too. I think that all kind of, blends into the same kind of what I do. It's all has to do with each other.
And tell us how you got started in glass.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I feel like I answer that differently every single time. I started glass because, to try to streamline this, because I was thinking about it today. And it's like, oh, wait, this thing 10 years before glass, this situation kind of got me to do that too. And, oh, this thing when I was 5 years old kind of led me to this too. So it's like, how did this start and how did this begin is very, very, very multi-dimensional. But my first experience with glass was meeting, I had met these guys and ladies out in Sterling, Mass, and they were working out of an old cider mill that had a glass blowing studio in there. And they started when they were like 15, and we were like between 18 and 21 at the time. And these people were having like a lot of fun making things that just like blew my mind. I've never been in a glass blowing studio, and to go in there, it was like the most like the coolest romantic situation for any sort of maker. You got fire, you got the smell of burning beeswax. You got in newspaper, and there's this like common like smell. Like almost every glass blowing studio has this aroma that's just beautiful. It means something's going on there, and it just was really inspiring and infinite what you could do with it. And it was just like I got to know more. I got to know more about this.
So, then did you just jump right in at that time and start learning?
No, none of these guys wanted to teach me. It was hard enough for me to I wanted to incorporate glass in the other things I was making at the time. So it was hard enough for me to just get them in shop time to be able to make these things, to incorporate in what I was already doing. Never mind getting taught. That wasn't in the cards. Every now and then somebody would maybe be like, oh, hold this pipe for me for a second while I take this gather or do this, but so that started my, this sort of frustration of seeing it being inspired and loving it, but it wasn't obtainable, forced me to learn about lamp working. And lamp working at the Worcester Center for Crafts, my teacher was Sally Prash at the time, and that introduction made glass possible to me immediately, like in my own home, and it just changed my world. It just made it available.
So cool. Sally's one of my idols, so I love finding those connections with her. Can you describe your style of work, maybe what you're doing now, and give us a visual of your workspace that you work out of?
Yeah, what I'm doing now, I've always got my hand in a couple different pots. I mean, when I got into glass, one of the things that I enjoyed about it was its infinity. You could not exhaust the possibilities of what you could do with it. So it wasn't boxing me into anything specific that I had to hold on to, so it gave me the joy of experimenting with not like one specific thing. However, there were two, kinds of work that I have stuck with over the years, which is, ocean related designs and minerals and fossils. And that's what I've been doing the last couple of years, is revisiting my passions for mineral, fossil, and anything geological in glass, because after all, glass is geological. It seems the perfect material, and I think that's another reason why I've been so attracted to it, is that it resembles minerals and crystals so well and so realistically that it just kind of bridges and makes sense to me to work with it as a medium.
I was wondering, most of your inspirations comes from what you talked about in your introduction, right? How do you take your inspiration and then bring it into your work? I know some people use clay, some people draw out. What's your process to get it down? Or you just bring it right to glass when you have a new idea?
When I have a new idea, I either have to create it right away, from mind to actual creation, or I have to draw it, and because I'm going to forget about it if I either don't make it right away or draw it, because right behind it there's another one, and you're always prioritizing the newest one, not the one you came up with 3 days ago or a month ago. It's always the newest one because you're the most excited about it. So you either have to make it materialize immediately, or you're going to draw it, and so that you can look back and say, oh, that's right, that was the most important thing to me that day. Why isn't it today? I should revisit that.
And do you find that those ideas are just coming in your head all the time, or do you get blocks sometimes?
Yeah, there's waves. Blocked, only lasts for like a day or two. It really seems like there's always, I think part of having a material to work with is giving your mind an excuse to think about what you can do with it too. So half of the fun isn't just working with the material and executing this thing out of glass. It's also the time you spend thinking and creating is just as important and part of it.
Do you ever struggle to get into the mindset of working, or is it something that just comes naturally and easily to you?
Yeah, I'm ready. So it's always on. I can't shut it off. I have to be working. It's that's part of the reason why this material, is really satisfying to me too, is that there's always something to do with it. When I run my studio, mostly by myself, with occasional help, so, for a few hours a week. There's a lot that goes on besides just making the thing. So there's, as you know, so it's like you wake up in the morning and you're already like problem solving, trying to figure out your day. So you just start. It's you're always going.
Do you, I know you mentioned that you go and like search for minerals and stuff. Is that something that you do and it specifically inspires your work? Like, do you ever find minerals and you're like, I have to make this from glass? Is that a big part of your inspiration or?
Yes, totally. The minerals have inspired me so much, since I've realized the capabilities of making minerals into glass designs into minerals. And it's been part of, I've been in that culture for a long time, doing some of the largest shows in the country, traveling around to all different mineral shows, both digging and participating in the mineral shows, and seeing, a lot of these places, it's a global culture. So when you do a show, it's not just everybody in your state. You get everybody from around the world, and both collectors and miners and retailers of peddlers of this stuff. So you get to see museum quality, amazing specimens in natural history and forms from all around the world that is absolutely mind-blowing. How can you not be inspired by that? And in glass is made of quartz, number one, and then a list of other ingredients that are geological right behind it. So it's like, wow, this fits together perfectly. I'm so inspired. I have this material that's geological. Most of the colors that make gemstones and crystals, colored the way they are, those elements in metals are the same that color glass. You start to break this down and it's like, wow, they're cousins. They're so related in so many ways, that it's just the perfect thing.
I love listening to the passion when you start talking on that line of thought. I did want to switch it around a little bit. I wanted to know how you make the majority of your income. So you've been doing this for 15 years. Do you have certain lines of products that you know are going to sell? Do you do trade shows? How have you been able to do this for 15 years? Or has there been an evolution to this?
I wouldn't say an evolution. I'd say being adaptable to change. There's never been, one set. You can't count on anything. It's not like you just go do these 3 shows every year and you make your income, because everything fluctuates, everything changes all the time, as we know the last year. But I like to take my work and my designs to people that are passionate about the same topic that I'm passionate about. When I was making sea creatures and octopus and jellyfish and coral reefs, I do shows where people were interested in maybe not just glass, but they're interested in the topic, like the soul of it, like interested in the aquatic design. So I do shows in there, or since I'm making mineral related artwork, I go to mineral shows. Some shows come and go, styles change, people change. It's just always, doing enough. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot. It's changed so many times that there was just not like an easy answer for that. It's just being adaptable.
That was pretty cool to hear. I was wondering, with your 20 years of experience, is there one lesson that you would tell the younger Jeremy? Like one struggle or one thing you've learned through all your time? A new perspective, maybe?
Ooh, good question. What would you do? What would I tell myself to do based on what I know now? Start younger. I waited, it took all those stepping stones to get there, and there was nobody that could really like pick it out and say, you know what, this is the one for you, but I wish I started younger, because it takes a long time to learn how to manipulate this stuff. It takes years, and by years I can mean a decade, before your muscle memory and your understanding of the flow of glass and heat and how it all relates comes, it can take a long time. Some people can pick it up, quicker, but you're talking years. And I don't know, I wish I started earlier.
That's such an important lesson, I feel. Is just that there's a lot of misconception about how fast you can learn something like glass. And I don't know if you teach at all, but it tends to be something that a lot of people get frustrated with pretty quickly.
Yeah, because it's a flowing material. You got to flow with it, so it looks like it's easy. It looks like, oh, there's this series of movements and it's all flowing so much. It's not like a hammer and a nail. It's so it looks like, oh, I can do that. That's so smooth. You're so smooth about it. It's like, no, it takes a while. Yeah.
I think you can take one of those things you said before. You write it all down and draw it all out. And then you might not be able to make those things now, but in a few years, you'll have the skill sets for all those plans, and your hands will finally be able to do what you want.
Yes, definitely. I've learned that lesson. That's why I've revisited some old notebooks from like way back, saying, oh wait, the reason I stopped, pursuing that then is because I didn't have the skills and the knowledge of how to do it then. Maybe, it's like in 10 years, 15 years later, oh, maybe you want to revisit some of these things and now see, what you can do with it with a new approach.
Chris Sherwin sent me an email saying he wished he talked about this, so I wanted to ask this question. How do you price your work? And how do you not let other people's judgments affect how you value your work?
It's one of the hardest things. It really is. There's a few things that come into it. I've always looked at my time as being most valuable versus like materials and stuff. You can't really factor that. It's so hard to gauge what I put $1.50 worth of glass in here, but it took me like 8 hours. How do you price that? And it took me 20 years to learn how to make it happen. And then there's like a perceived value. You can make this thing. You can spend a month working on one piece. And is just because you put a month into this piece and you put all this stuff into it doesn't automatically mean it's worth $10,000. Right? There's like a perceived value, and you can break that down however you want to. So, when you have this object that you're finished with, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know, just because I put all the blood, sweat, and tears or not, or whatever into it, what's the perceived value? I think you got to be really good at kind of understanding where other people are coming from when pricing your work and not you. I think that might be, because it's not all about, about you at that point.
So I was wondering what your perception of success for yourself is, or if you feel like you could classify yourself as a successful glassblower.
Well, I think when you're in crafts and arts and you're any creative kind of person, there's this sort of infinite dissatisfaction that you're always reaching to create the perfect thing. So to feel successful, oh man, I think maybe you'll have to look backwards at, like, was this year successful? It depends where you put that line, you know. I think if you set a bar for yourself, be careful, because set it low. I mean, you don't have to base your success based on what you consider somebody else's success to be, because you might not, do that. Make it your own and have your own, like, have your own description of success, and it might be like these little things, and those are just as important as, what success might be. Really big. When you say the word success, you start thinking very big things, have I accomplished this, do I have this dream studio, this house, this have I sold a piece for $1 million, have I, all this stuff. No, I think I think being able to do something creatively that fuels you to make something else creatively, and you've succeeded.
I love that.
If you can maintain it, you're successful. in the smallest amount of words.
I love that. And what's your biggest battle with putting your work out there?
It's it's an emotional battle, when you put yourself out there, because creating something, doing this, it's a form of language and expression, and you're wearing your heart on your sleeve kind of the whole way. And when you really attach yourself to some of this stuff. I mean, some of it you don't, it's just a living, but when you make something that's really comes from deep, and somebody, does something similar, and you see it's right after you do it or something like that, you're always inspiring and influencing other people while you're doing it, too. And you have to, like, learn how to control that sort of sense of ego and ownership over things, because other people have passions too that are similar or the same thing, or want to do, and you got to let go of this sense of ownership, and when I was younger, it really what kind of bothered me sometimes, but I was learning how to manage these emotions, because it's there. You can't deny, and other people will tell you how to feel too. You get somebody, hey, you're going to take that, look at this person that, especially in social media, it's so easy now to refer to very similar things really quickly. You just got to do what you do, and be happy you're doing it, and don't pay attention to.
I think that's really helpful for a lot of people. It's just like realizing that it is something that we always have to be working on, and we always have to confront those feelings rather than just like acting on the feelings.
Yeah. Quick response is usually not always the best. Yeah. You kind of like sit back and like think about it, and know that it's because a lot of these things are really important to the person making it. So that there's that sense of ownership. That's that real connection there, and we're kind of defending that sense of ego and individuality. If I make this, it's basically what it comes down to. Is like this object outside of my body that was once in my mind is part of me and makes me an individual. This is, in broader terms, and we defend that. So you got to learn that it doesn't mean you're still not an individual, and it's not the most important thing to you still, just because somebody else will share an inspiration. Oh, you like that too, and you have the ability to be able to create something as well. Well, now we're similar, and it's great to share at that point. Maybe not.
I know that's a really hard question, but when I think of you and your work, I think of you as a really successful artist, and it's nice to hear that you struggle with the same kinds of things that we struggle with, and it makes people feel like maybe they're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't stop, just because you're another year into it, or you're still doing the same thing. You're trying to be original and creative and bring your inside out into this form. And what we consider a threat to that form, can come in many different ways. But basically, I think we some artists really value it and protect it because it's an extension of themselves.
Sometimes it's hard not to be defensive of something that you feel is yours, even though you're sharing it. So if there was one thing that you could leave off on, something that you just wanted to share with the world or tell people listening, what would it be?
Well, I don't know. I was always inspired by Joseph Campbell. He was a philosopher and writer, and he talked about following your bliss, right? And anything you do when following your bliss is the path of least resistance, right? So, which basically comes down to that you don't call work resistance as much. It changes what you consider work, So when you have a passion to do something, if those blood, sweat, and tears we were talking about aren't a negative thing, aren't a bad thing, because you had a passion and a drive to do it because you want to do it. So if you spend 12 hours doing something that you were inspired to do, and at the end of that, if somebody else said, if I had to work 12 hours that day, oh my God, that would be horrible. And you're like, well, what do you mean? I just, you're following your bliss, and it might be the right thing to do. You'll work harder for something if it matters. It won't seem as though it's work or as much,
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Connected in Glass. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information on the artists we interview and for updates on. Join our Patreon and watch demonstrations from these and other glass artists all around the world. See the insides of their studio spaces and gain more insight into the life of these glass artists through video interviews.